Hey guys, tonight we're going to unravel a peculiar piece of history that dives into the tapestry of medieval life, where being a bit bigger could mean a lot of trouble. Imagine us sitting here with the soft glow from a nearby candle, our blankets piled so high they could be mistaken for a modest hill, and a sleepy dog nestled by our feet, dreaming of chasing something far less complicated than history. You probably won't survive this journey without a few chuckles, given the quirks of life back then. Before you get too comfy, feel free to tap like or subscribe, but only if you're genuinely enjoying the calm around here. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is over there. I love seeing how far this sleepy little journey reaches. Now, go ahead and lower the lights. Maybe let a fan hum in the background, and let's drift gently into tonight's story together. You wake up to a world where the very air is draped with the fluttering whispers of troubadours and the clang of blacksmiths working at dawn's break. You wander into the bustling heart of a medieval village, where a larger waistline spells more distress than just having to adjust your belt. Back in those days, people didn't quite idolize the extra layers you carried. To them, it screamed of luxury, gluttony, and a lack of self-control, traits that made society raise an eyebrow or two, maybe three if possible. Imagine a time when food was not as Instagrammable as now, and scarcity more often dined at the table than abundance did. So when someone bore the signs of too many feasts, folks couldn't help but wonder, was that person hiding a stash of pastries somewhere? Perhaps a secret chamber filled with sweet delights? They might not have had TikTok back then to share snippets of their hoards, but the town's gossip mill was splendidly efficient in its own right. Historically, carrying extra weight in medieval Europe wasn't about the shame that modern society sometimes attributes to it. No, it was all tangled up with societal status, health misconceptions, and moral judgments. In a world where work was physical and food a precious commodity, extra weight signified a different standing in life, one not always admired. You see, back then, kings and queens might flaunt their rounder figures as a mark of opulence, but for your average Jill or John down the street, it was a whole different story. And here's a quirky side note. Some folks even believed that demons could dance on the heads of pins. A little weird when you're also worrying if they're judging the extra pudding you've had. But honestly, the line between extraordinary and ordinary grew blurred in such a mystical feeling world, and so did the interpretations of what it meant to have more around your middle. Historians still argue whether medieval attitudes towards weight were as rigid as we assume, or if, perhaps with a bit of wine in the evening, people shrugged and decided every body carried its own tale. This debate echoes through dusty libraries and has most likely kept scholars awake, at least until the church bells tuned their morning symphony. You can't help but laugh a bit, imagining how absurd those town criers would find today's obsession over calories, BMI apps, or scrolling through fitness challenges while munching on a stash of guilt-inducing snacks. In your fuzzy sock-clad world, the idea of deleting a post because it didn't gather enough likes feels strangely parallel to medieval villagers, wishing their waistlines didn't gather village whispers. And so, as you stand here in the market square, watching the people pass by with baskets of bread and tales of kings, you begin to piece together the curious fabric of a world where being fat was less about appearance and more about the swirling judgments of a time steeped in superstition and scarcity. See, they didn't have emails to ignore or resumes to update while lying on a straw-covered floor. but every belly carried stories as rich and layered as any inbox today. Catch your breath, my friend, as we weave through this story at our leisurely pace. We're in no rush here. Imagine you've set 5 alarms earlier and ignored them all, drifting deeper into the adventure of understanding why weight was more than just a number in medieval times. So, tuck yourself under your own modern blanket fort as we continue this journey through history that's a little winding, a touch rebellious, and much more awake than you probably feel right now. The night's still young, or at least comfortably sleepy, as we settle into the next chapter of our tale. You find yourself wandering next through the creaky corridors of a medieval castle, where the walls seem to whisper secrets from every shadowy tapestry. Here, let's peek into a world where your wardrobe wasn't exactly what you'd call one size fits all. The fashion game was a tricky business, wrapped in layers of wool, hemp, and, if you were lucky, a touch of silk, though not nearly enough to warrant a hashtag. Imagine trying to slip into a tunic that fits like those old socks you can't bear to part with. Medieval fashion wasn't about comfort. It was about displaying status and standing in society. Sort of like posting a filtered selfie at sunset, minus the likes. The cut of your coat hardie or the flow of your hoopalande could cause quite the stir if you weren't fitting the fit. During the medieval period, clothing was tailored, not in the way a sleek suit might be cut for a snazzy event today, but tailored by necessity. If you carried a bit more around your waist, adjustments weren't as easy as letting out a seam. Fabrics were precious and laborious to make, so tailor-made was sometimes a luxury. It's like ordering takeout when you've just stocked up the fridge. Sure, it hits the spot, but there's a cost. Here's a fun fact. Fashion trends during the medieval times weren't born from glossy magazines or influencers. They trickled down from royalty and the nobility. To be fashionable meant to emulate the upper echelons, even if your daily life involved more sheep herding than castle dwelling. But fashion wasn't just about looking good. It was about fitting physically and figuratively into your social role. Talk about pressure to impress when attending your local jousting match. And get this, knights and nobles weren't the only ones donning these splendiferously impractical garments. Even the clergy had specific stylings, though theirs were more about humility than flaunting flair. Yet one could say that even the devout might hide a little extra padding beneath their robes, not the heavenly kind, mind you. Church officials often held plenty of feasts, and the evidence occasionally showed in their expanding waistlines. Historians still argue whether medieval clothing truly reflected one's prosperity, or if, perhaps, it was a cruel reminder of the constraints society placed on individuals. Was fashion a form of expression, or simply a way to adhere? Maybe both, in a world caught between what one had and what one aspired to. Light chuckles fill your thoughts as you imagine medieval icons staring down at you today, perhaps befuddled by our penchant for stretchy fabrics and our affinity for cozy loungewear. Pajamas all day? They'd probably wonder what ritual of leisure allowed such comfort while still signaling you're casually responsible. You can almost hear the medieval tailors whispering to their apprentices, like some secret society of stitchers peering into patterns. Just a little more room here, but not too much. The intricacy and skill required was more art than science, much like watching cooking shows while eating instant noodles. The juxtaposition, almost too perfect not to appreciate. As you step away from the castle walls and stroll back towards the bustling village, Imagine those who walked these same cobbled paths, fashioning tales as grand as the cloth that clothed them. The enveloping fabric of time connects us in this mystical, whimsical story, still unfurling with every yard of imaginary cloth. Grab your favorite souvenir, or, in this case, your medieval mindset, and hold it close as you scroll past a few more centuries. Our night is still cloaked in the kind of comforting darkness that invites introspection, and it's these dimly lit musings that shape our narrative, cozy as can be. Just a simple yarn we're spinning here, with threads of history woven in a tapestry of wonder. Let the echoes of footfalls on ancient stone guide our way forward, balancing our whimsical take on what came before. You find yourself drifting to the outskirts of the village, where grassy fields stretch out like the pages of a well-worn book, whispering tales of feast and famine. Here, the rhythm of life beats to the tune of harvests, unpredictable at best and downright scarce at times. Feast or famine wasn't just a saying, it was the medieval way of life. It's kind of like how you buy groceries with the best of intentions, only to order takeout because cooking feels like an Olympic sport. You wander into a scene where villagers prepare for a festival, tables groan under the weight of dishes, a short-lived abundance in a world where quick fixes rarely exist. Beyond the revelry, the truth was evident. Regular meals fell victim to the season's whims, leaving gaps where hunger tended to nestle comfortably. In this medieval saga, your reflection in a puddle reveals a tale written by both feast and famine. Too many feasts might earn a wary nod. Too many famines, a concerned glance. Keeping the balance was a high-wire act, performed daily with little more than a hope and a prayer. The quirky bit: medieval folks had a knack for preservation methods that had put our modern pickling enthusiasts to shame. Salting, smoking, or fermenting everything they could. These techniques were the ancient world's equivalent of meal prepping for winter's harsh advance. And yet, no salted hams or cured fish could resolve the constant specter of scarcity looming like an unwelcome guest. Historians still argue whether medieval communities coped with feasting as a joyful abandonment of restraint or as a survival mechanism where stuffing oneself was more practical than celebratory. Was it collective joy or instinctual necessity driving those merry festivities? Maybe it was a dance between the two, as rhythmic as the sound of barrels being tapped in celebration. As you stroll further, you can't help but imagine the feast halls as bustling hubs alive with stories as rich as the food served there. Or, in darker times, as resonant with the absence of such. A table shared equals camaraderie. A missing one equals longing. It's like a meme-worthy contradiction of writing LOL without actually laughing. That awkward space between what's apparent and what's aching inside. Even where tradition held laughter and sharing, an underlying tension shadowed gluttonous gatherings. A full belly was a fleeting triumph in an endless skirmish against what the land might or might not yield next. It feels a bit like those mornings you set multiple alarms, convincing yourself every extra minute under the duvet isn't luxury, but a necessity for survival through the day's adventures. Beyond the hall's threshold, life moved in cycles of want and whimsy. The fields rocked gently under a sky eternally pondering its choice between sun and storm, trying its best to oblige. You, my friend, stand at the edge of this eternal dance, the gentle pull of what waits beyond the horizon, ever a reminder of history's lessons whispered across 1,000 years. So, as the sun sets behind rolling hills, beneath a twilight sky, reminiscent of nights spent cocooned in familiar comforts. You are invited to feast with me on dreams and stories, epic in their retelling. Let's carry on. A tapestry unfurling before us, threaded through with laughter and questions and those curious, cozy gaps where we muse together, knowing well the journey's true joy lies not in answers, but in the wonder. You meander now through a landscape dotted with huts and larger homes crafted from timber and clay, their thatched roofs like old hats doffing in the breeze. The air is alive with the bustle of daily medieval life, and yet something more elusive flickers just beneath the surface. Here, beauty and health intertwine in a complex dance, woven from societal expectations, whispered even into the ears of those without mirrors to reflect upon. You step into a home where a woman, Joan maybe, is preparing a meal. Her reflection, murky at best in a polished metal basin, stares back at her. In a time before glass mirrors became commonplace, what a wild thought. People relied on water basins and slick surfaces to catch glimpses of themselves. Not perfectly, but enough to prompt thoughts on beauty and its fleeting nature. Beauty standards then weren't dictated by a glossy magazine or endless scrolling, but by ideals carried across generations and depicted in religious art or stories told by warm firesides. Thick hair, clear skin. These might have been admired, while a larger frame often matched whispers of indulgence or laziness, even in an era where roundness sometimes equated to prosperity. The quirky tidbit? Certain towns employed ale conners, officials tasked with testing the quality of beer by sitting on benches soaked in ale. If their britches stuck, the brew was subpar. It's a little like trusting a quirky app with questionable algorithms to tell you what's hot or not these days. A strange measure by today's standards that somehow made perfect sense back then. Historians still debate if these perceptions of beauty and health were universally significant, or if they fluctuated wildly based on locality and lifestyle. Did a village by the sea prize differently from a court entrenched in extravagant wealth and opulence? Possibly, and therein lies part of the tale's charm. The ever-changing canvas of what it meant to fit in or stand out. Walking through these ancient cobbled trails, you can almost sense the silent dialogues exchanged in marketplaces and whispered over stone fences. What constituted beauty? Health? Reputation? We self-soothe with images made tangible on screens, seeking more than ourselves in rendered perfection. A difference only of extent, not essence, it seems. And in kind yet humorous contrast, consider how today we delete social apps to focus, only to reinstall them soon after, seeking quiet validation or connection, just as folks then might have found a semblance of it in communal circles. Different forms, similar threads, all twined around the heart of human experience. As you stroll towards the edge of this settlement, the sights and sounds of history quieten to a murmur, leaving room for reflection. You carry it with you tenderly, as one might a small lamp against the dim, pondering not the reflections of this world, but what its shadows reveal. What truths remain etched deeper than surface lines, and how do they guide our modern eyes to look upon ourselves with a humanity learned across such vast cycles of life and light? The night deepens, yet our journey continues to unfold, stitched together by the threads of time. With each step, we peer further into the stories gently cradled by history's embrace, where each tale bends and curves, inviting us to chase its sounds. So settle in, get cozy under your layers, and let's keep wading through the soft stream of medieval musings, collecting more memories, like once-forgotten earworms from a lullaby that only half awakes the sleepers. As you drift further into our story, you're now strolling through a grand hall where tapestries hang heavy with the conquests and chronicles of kings and queens, much like your unread notifications that somehow still feel heavier than your phone could ever weigh. Situate yourself in a medieval court where royalty, cloaked in elegance and powdered authority, dictate not just laws, but fashion, and, by extension, what it means to be just right in appearance. Imagine yourself at a royal feast, the table stretched lavishly before you. Plates abound with roasted game, honey-drenched delights, and fruits aplenty. Kings and queens, often thicker in form, were admired and emulated, embodiment of prosperity and divine favor. To them, a fuller figure meant, I can afford all the things, which wasn't quite the headline-earning scandal you'd get today when someone flaunts their six-figure shopping spree online. The court's dictations didn't stop at the suit of armor or the fit of the doublet. Instead, they tread over the very size and stature of their subjects. Those in the realms of power boasted waistlines that rivaled that of the banquet tables they adored. Paradoxically, what sovereigns cherished as signs of abundance, the common folk often bore as burdens of consequence. A stark medieval juxtaposition that might leave you chuckling, much like replying LOL to a message stone-faced. Quirky bit on the side. They believed wearing jewels purified the bloodstream. Just why lords and ladies adorned themselves so. Perhaps in the hope it brought better complexion or slimmer silhouettes along with it. Sort of funny when you think how we apply filters today to delight in the ephemeral beauty we seek. And historians still argue whether entire royal lineages grew round from genuine preference or some unwritten rule that more body mass equated to more gravitas. Was it truly a choice? Or did peer pressure weave a tighter corset on even the most regal shoulders? One must wonder if errant comments arose on the sly, poking jest, guised as respect, at those extended profiles upon royal benches. A chuckle rises from your lips as you picture today's wellness gurus being tossed back in time to these medieval feasts, negotiating diets amidst goblets of mead and piles of pastries. Their guides to fasting would align with Lenten restrictions, yet here they'd find rhythms skewed by the royal decrees, random as the whimsy of a bored monarch at dusk. You take a turn down the cobbled path of what if, pondering the idea that one size lay entangled with duty, privilege, and appearance. Did the minstrel's tunes ever strum a tale or two about subjects whose silhouettes symbolized stratification? Only the enduring whispers of these ancient stones might tell. Ambling now away from that feast of plenty, the scent of rosemary and roasted meat fades into the evening air. The cool breeze whispers softly, as if enticing you to peer ever deeper into the shadows and highlights history casts upon itself. The hour feels like one where every surface becomes a mirror of contemplation, with inspirations bouncing back into your own reflections, cradled by dark skies flecked with starlight. This tapestry of lives and layers goes on, inviting you to trace your own journey through time, connected by the quiet hum that seems to echo from the hallowed halls of old, bringing us further into this night that wraps around us, a comforting embrace. Hold tight your listening ears as we ease into the story's next absconded tangent and linger on the melodies yet unsung, knowing our shared reverence for discovery awaits the light of day. shine a gentle wave over your thoughts as closed eyelids guide us gently toward the heart of history's enchantment. You find yourself stepping into the cool shadows of a stone corridor, where the clink of armor echoes like a distant melody, a soft percussion against the tapestry of time. Here, the tale of the medieval knight unfolds, those storied figures, both larger than life and deeply human, certainly their own brands of influencers in chainmail and tabards. Picture a scene rich with anticipation, an arena of valor and spectacle where everyone holds their breath, much like the second before you send a risky text or stare at an email you've drafted but haven't quite sent. The knights, clad in steel, were expected to be paragons of strength and agility. Yet, knights who wore their bulk with pride often found themselves in a quandary when trying to hoist themselves onto their noble steeds. In an era without comment sections, the field's stifled laughter told a tale of its own, a foreshadowing to those moments we all share, when expectations meet the sometimes far less coordinated reality. In the heart of this spectacle stood Sir Geoffrey and his noble horse, Pebbles, who, despite the majestic name, was akin to a slightly disgruntled cloud on legs. The knight's armor weighed heavy with history and embellishment, each plate a testament to his feats. Yet, as he attempted the grand mount, an undignified grunt echoed. It's the equivalent of attempting an intense backflip for TikTok with spectators on all sides. It doesn't always go as planned. Here's a whimsical tidbit. Battles often paused for knights to assist each other with armor mishaps. Rivalries aside, helping a fellow knight with a stuck visor or an unbuckled strap was part of the unspoken chivalry code. Picture today's competitive spirit blended with moments of benevolence. We might just avoid countless public faux pas and wardrobe malfunctions along the virtual catwalk of hashtags. Historians still argue whether a knight's physique played a significant role in warfare effectiveness, or if the intangible strength lay more within the maneuver's mastery over valiant and mighty steeds, decked in barding and promise. Was it the armor's art, or the spirit within, that determined the battlefield's true conqueror? A debate that keeps scholars theorizing across contexts, connecting chords through modern echoes. A reminder we each calibrate our own gear, metaphorically speaking. Footsteps resound across worn stones as you travel deeper into this knightly world, bearing witness to their moments of grandeur and folly alike, an inexplicably relatable duality of epic proportions. Our own errors seem smaller, embraced within this carnival of clang and daring do. Laughter bubbles up, surprising in its warmth, much like realizing you've been binge-watching cleaning videos instead of actually tidying up. Somehow entertaining and exasperatingly familiar. On evenings longer than hirelings' shadows, perhaps over shared ale and fireside tales, the night's mirth might wander through the arena bungles, shoulder shrugs gathering companionship and laughter. Such shortcomings, shared among friends and foes, bind through jest, finding unity in humanity's quintessential folly of striving, slipping, and yet rising anew. So tuck these stories beside you, like a childhood nightlight casting gentle beams, revealing less gloom and more heard-of harmony. As night deepens into velvet, let our breathing together on this eternal road blanket any woes felled today, reminding you courage echoes through both steel and silence. With time ever our companion, this journey continues unfolding across the common thread of existence, from steed to screen, stretching before us like an oversized tunic, perhaps ill-fitting, but ultimately embraced. Rest easy, as the fabric of storytelling covers your dreams in curiosity and wonder, eager to share with you the next soft, starlit turn. You find yourself weaving through the bustling streets of a medieval village, where the resonant bells of the church call the faithful to gather. In a time when the echoes of psalms fused with the smell of incense and burning candles, the church stood as more than just a religious bastion. It was the moral compass of the era, scrutinizing everything from dietary choices to daily sins. Picture a cosmic confession where everyone grapples with their version of scrolling on 2% battery, seeking salvation from a well-fed conscience. Inside, you blend into a congregation filled with those who've come to confess their indulgences and gather penance, perhaps for an extra slice of rich pudding or that indulgent swill from last night's cask. This time reveals the intersect between faith and feast, where the local clergy preached moderation as though it were inscribed on stone tablets. Adopting dogmas not dissimilar to modern wellness coaches, but worded in prayers and parables. It was, to say the least, the medieval version of cutting carbs. You might chuckle to find out that gluttony, then a cardinal sin, had its own place in sermons, served with a side of stern warning. The irony didn't escape those who returned from confession only to snack upon the very transgressions just lip-serviced away. This exhibited humanity's more than century-old propensity to interpret restrictions as spreadsheets rather than scriptures. Consider this quirky little note. Some medieval clergy advocated for annual weigh-ins of clerical staff to ensure they didn't fall into sinful corpulence. Imagine pairing up this ancient weigh-in approach with our modern fad diets, assessing faith not sized by devotion, but waistband elasticity. Perhaps the resemblance resonates with you when tempted by the equation of good intentions versus lingering midnight snacks. Historians still argue whether the church's knit-in rules about weight and sin restrained individuals more profoundly than their personal lines of morality. Was the communal accountability a deterrent, or merely another dance around societal circles? Would cushions grow thinner or expand when tagged by such subtle socio-religious nudges? Varying interpretations simmer down through time's sieve, finding their resonant chords among dusty pews and pewter goblets. Amidst these reflections, a soft laugh bubbles up as you consider that perhaps there was some merit in these musings, albeit presented theatrically by lantern-lit men of cloth. They might have viewed it less about waistlines and more about alignment within life's cloaked complexity. In the swaying cadence of chants that thrive from then until now, the balance of belief and body sways harmoniously like a friend caught texting on my way, while stretching the next nav stitch on a sundial. As the church doors swing open to usher in the world once more, you take in the cobbled streets that meet each congregant at arm's length. The air carries echoes of reflections and reformations pondered from past to present. Every step displaces a stone, unseen yet undeniably felt, much like history itself, threading and weaving its own confessional story on this canvas of time-hardened paths. Through all of history's prayers and ponderings, may your own journey overlap gently with those whispers carried by night's mantle, the soothing promise that tales shared and dreams woven hold more beauty than barriers, more unity than burdens. Let's lean back now. Time to rest our narratives and embrace the comfort draping over this togetherness of understanding and shared trials. With the hour growing softer, enfold yourself in these stories that lull us into dreams brimming with history, hope, and heart-tuned harmony. The courtyard of consciousness beckons for those willing to step within, while the quiet comforts of this journey shared shield us peacefully against night's sleeping embrace, until the tale draws us back into its sunlight weave. You wander now into the wide, open fields, where the earthy smell of freshly turned soil mingles with the morning mist, wrapping the world in a sleepy kind of beauty. Here, the life of the medieval peasant unfolds, a story not of nobility, but of nature, a symphony played out with each harvest and the pulse of the seasons. In these fields, health was measured less by girth and more by grit. The labor was backbreaking, a relentless dance between survival and sustenance, leaving little room for excess. Picture yourself, not unlike binge-watching future documentaries, immersed in the art of mere existence, where each seed sown was a promise and every harvested sheaf a fulfilled hope. The peasants, those stalwarts of the land, wore their endurance as dearly as any knight their armor. Fashioned not from steel, but strength, their bodies were honed by work, a visible reflection of their lively work ethic. And here's the eccentric bit. While royal courts discussed weighty matters over grand meals, peasants lived on simpler fare. A good, hearty soup could mean the difference between productive days or faltering fields. As you listen to the hum of the countryside, it's easy to imagine the humorous scene of a peasant casting a skeptical side eye at any nearby noble. Armed with bread and cheese rather than sword and shield, the hierarchy played out in more ways than one. A dialogue as silent yet distinct as the persistent call of roosters at dawn. Historians still debate whether these contrasting lifestyle choices and appearances were fully shaped by choice or mere circumstance. Was it the stubborn soil or hardy determination that forged the peasant's resilience? Or perhaps a little of both, woven seamlessly into the heart of who they were, beaten as it were by the unyielding march of daily chores. Thoughts drift lazily in their turn, much like gazing out of rain-speckled windows, having forgotten which tab number 26 was, or losing yourself in curiosity while asking Google how to get life together at 3 a.m. These musings, across past and present, cradle us in a contemplative charm, a knowing nod from those who've waded through mud and marvel forgotten. Your steps carry you further, weaving between rows of vegetables abundant or bare, each a testament to fate, not dictated by fickle metrics of finance, but by each passing season's benevolence. With every ancient footprint you fit yourself within, you find echoes of a quiet pride, humble yet sturdy, like well-worn boots resisting even the fiercest storm, beneath the sweeping vista of the endless sky. Let these stories gather you close with whispers that history serves warm in the wear of wood and wool. A lullaby sung with the whistle of the wind. Find within them the steady beat of time's heart. A familiar friend leading you through twilight's embrace into dreams spun from the same yarn of effort and endurance. As you reach the road's end, the horizon sings not of what's beyond, but what here and now holds true. This tapestry we unravel together bears us gently into its folds, welcoming our dreams laced with labyrinthine thoughts. We're lulled into comforts shaped by both toil and tale, all unfurling like breaths of mist across dawn-lit meadows, where our imaginations dance until the morning star calls back the world anew. In this tender twilight, rest easy in the knowledge that we are, were, and remain, kindred spirits dancing through the veils of time, crafting our chronicles written with laughter, labor, and light. Let it cradle you, softly, upon this memory-strewn journey until another night beckons us with its inviting enchantments and timeless tales retold. As the path lifts you gently from the humble fields, your journey brings you to the doorsteps of medieval medicine, a strange realm where cure and curiosity danced an unpredictable waltz. Picture a little room lit by candlelight, where everything from alarming poultices to leeches might find a home, seeking to heal bodies that often baffled their times. It's akin to Googling strange symptoms with one eye covered, hoping not to stumble upon the apocalypse of diagnoses. Here, herbalists and amateur physicians clung tightly to scrolls filled with both sound advice and suspect logic. Anatomy was a mystery more poorly understood than the cryptic behaviors of today's algorithms when they decide what you'll see next on your feed. Imagine attempting to alleviate a fever with nothing but chamomile tea and prayers, a far cry from popping an aspirin or texting a friend for reassurance. You linger in the shadowy corners where jars and dried herbs hang like relics, conjuring a mix of foreboding and faith. Despite the peculiarities, medieval medicine had some foundation. They understood the importance of diet and the role it played in maintaining one's health, a revelation that resonates even today amidst our kale smoothies and intermittent fasting apps that seem to multiply each tick of the clock. Here's an odd tidbit. For some ailments, they believed swallowing crushed emeralds could work wonders, though modern dentists would likely frown upon such costly treatments. Nevertheless, among these oddities, one finds a warning too. Countless people trusted whatever concoction was passed around, hoping for relief, but often paying dearly for the dubious privilege. Historians still argue whether these primitive practices were genuine attempts at healing or fanciful placebo contrived from the fog of ignorance. Were these remedies heartfelt efforts, crafted with faith and folly, or just desperate lurches grasping at what little straws of knowledge floated by? It's an open debate, much like wondering whether those targeted ads really listen to us or if it's just coincidence. Breaking into a chuckle, you envision a modern individual stepping into this apothecary with a head cold, only to be offered a tincture with more eye of newt than sense. Imagine the looks exchanged over herbal teas today, brewed with sincerity, but perhaps no more efficacious than the hopes pinned to them. The street outside beckons as it begins to soften into the comforting calm of twilight, inviting you to muse upon what lies ahead and what trails behind. Our own perceptions entwined with night's whispered breezes, shadows tempered by flickering starlight telling their enduring tales. In this confluence of story and silence, let our thoughts meander freely over the tapestry of what was, shaped by hands unknown and journeys untaken. A soothing, familiar hum calms the curious heart, gently tugging us ever further towards the night's reassuring embrace. So, nestle into these narratives, coiled through time, where every laughter echoes and stray thought finds a home. May these tales wrap around you snugly, as warmly familiar as your softest sweater, as enduring as night's longest dreams. Let's drift gently, held by whispers of history's past as we listen and learn until the dawn calls once more, with its own brand of fascination waiting to be unfurled. As we drift deeper into the tale, you find yourself meandering through the lively chaos of a medieval jousting tournament. The energy is palpable, the kind of thrill that feels like scrolling through social media on 2% battery when you're holding your breath, silently hoping to catch that last post before your world shuts off. You stand amidst a swirling crowd gathered to watch knights compete, each mounted on a proud steed, their armor glinting in the sunlight like the medieval edition of a power suit. The knights, champions of their realms, sport regalia as heavy with courage as with decoration, a reminder of the mystical mix of chivalry and showmanship. Picture yourself cheering from the sidelines as knights charge at each other, lances poised to break records or bones. The excitement serves more than entertainment. It's a spectacle that promises valor just as much as it teases the absurdity of bravado. Kind of like sending that "on my way" text while still in the depths of your blanket fortress. Here's where the fun comes in. Occasionally, a match would lead less to triumph and more to hilarious mishap. A knight unwelcomely finding himself dismounted, his armor clattering to the ground in an undignified heap. It's a bit like attempting a grand entrance only to trip over your own shoes. It happens to the best of us, even those in liquid metal suits. Now, here's a quirky tidbit. Knights sometimes face the challenge of finding their horses to be less than cooperative on dusty tournament grounds. Imagine the age-old tradition of noble jousts disrupted by a steed that refuses to budge, too busy munching on grass or more interested in the cheer of spectators than its rider's earnest commands. Historians still argue whether tournaments were truly trial by combat or more akin to the playful simulations of battle. Were these bouts earnest tests of knighthood? Or was it the equivalent of cosplay at today's Comic-Con, blending fantasy and reality in colorful revelries? They might have dreamed beyond their horizons, just as we might when wrapped in blankets, watching adventure flicks on a binge spree. In the midst of such hilarity and honor, you find yourself chuckling at the image of these armored fellows, perhaps secretly begrudging their cumbersome attire. Concealed within it, they preserve not just dignity, but a silent wish for fewer metal links chafing their skin. It's like setting out for a run in new shoes, only to discover their hidden talent for blisters. The festival unfolds with an ease of camaraderie, stories of past clashes echoing in jovial toasts and exaggerated boasts. There's something endearing about the timelessness of friendship formed over shared exploits and the collective relief of a life-or-death day ending more in humor than history. As the sun sets over the arena, casting a golden glow over the weary but exhilarated, it leaves hanging in the air the kind of satisfaction found in simultaneous chaos and order. It feels familiar, doesn't it? Those moments where you let out a big sigh after a giant spaghetti mess of tumbleweed emails collapses into triumph. With dusk settling into a garnet sky, let's hold on to these stories as one might a treasure unearthed during play. Connection rests in the weave of tales reenacting both gallant gestures and glancing blows of amusing misadventures, ones that hold us tenderly through the twilight and beyond, when shadows settle and dreams slip by. So continue to let the rhythm of history's lullaby guide you through jousts of a forgotten age and whirls of time's embrace. Wrapped in this comforting cadence, let's drift, dreaming of worlds past and futures imagined, until dawn entices us to unfurl new chapters, each alive with all the vibrant hues of yesterday, history breathing softly in our ears. As the evening deepens into a hushed twilight, you find yourself wandering into an artist's guild, an eclectic space filled with the hum of creation and the smell of fresh paint mingling with candle wax. Imagine a place where colors are stories waiting to be told, where every brushstroke is an echo from the heart, reminiscent of scrolling through an endless feed of images, each vying for a moment of attention yet somehow so profoundly silent. Within this lively yet serene studio, medieval artists sit hunched over their canvases, capturing the world as they see it, or perhaps how they wish it to be seen. Their works are more than just reflections. They are dreams rendered in vibrant hues, revealing truths and tales hidden beneath layers of oil and pigment. Medieval art tells us much about how society saw itself, or at least how it wanted to be seen at fancy banquets and peppery town gatherings. With little in the way of a selfie stick and no just woke up like this era, folks relied on commissioned portrayals that occasionally took liberties with the subject's Rubenesque proportions. Kings with a bit more to love, painted with an extra helping of dignity, and queens with regal grace, as though their majesty were the result of carefully curated lighting. Here's a quirky side note. Certain medieval artists became renowned for their ability to paint the same subject in two vastly different lights, essentially medieval Photoshop. It's hard not to chuckle imagining a noble receiving their portrait, only to find themselves slightly more heroic and a few pounds lighter, an ancient echo of today's filtered realities. Historians still argue whether the true intent of medieval art was to document reality or craft a more idealized vision. Was it a faithful reflection of its times, or was it more a creative leap across what was and into what should be? These questions echo through art galleries and academic debates, much like the confusion of finding last year's meme making an unexpected and glorious comeback. Standing amid the gallery, you sense a quiet kinship with these artists, whose works breathed life into stone-cold walls and invited all who passed to pause, to look deeper. Their canvases tell stories of a world where form followed faith and ideals rather than nature's likeness. It's much like opening 27 tabs of conflicting inspiration, yet somehow finding harmony in the cacophony, turning the noise into a symphony. The gallery hums with a kind of vibrancy, vibrant and alive, despite the years folded between now and then, where echoes of the past spill into our dreams. The artist's strokes were more than observations. They were aspirations, penned in the fertile soil of creativity, where modern minds continue to till memories anew. As the studio's soft candlelight flickers, shadows dance gently on the walls, an ethereal ballet that mirrors our shared voyage through the stories of old. With each brush of history against your thoughts, let the warmth and wonder envelop you, whispering traces of tales lovingly told when the world was young and still huddled under starlight. So, slip into the comforting embrace of twilight as tales and hues entwine around you effortlessly. Dream of landscapes painted and paths untraveled, where reality and imagination meld into the fabric of timeless stories, waiting to weave another night's peaceful tapestry. Rest here, as history holds us kindly close, until the morning beckons to once again reveal life's wonder, awaiting day's first gentle caress. You find yourself meandering into the heart of a bustling medieval town, where cobblestones and chatter mingle under the open sky. Townsfolk weave through market stands that brim with colorful assorted wares, each stall exhaling the scents of warm spices and freshly baked bread. Imagine an atmosphere as alive as bustling DIY videos, or the unexpected joy of finding your favorite series has just dropped a new episode. Among the vendors, a tailor shop stands as a lively gathering point. Cloths of every texture and hue drape from the ceiling, each piece telling its own story of journeys across distant lands. The air pulses with the rhythmic snip of scissors and the click-clack of looms. a little like the modern hum of keyboard keys when you're busy updating your resume while also lying flat on the floor. The role of tailors in this medieval scene couldn't be overstated. Clothes were more than coverings. They were a physical narrative of status and class, a bit like brand taglines we love or loathe. Tailors were the hidden architects behind this social armor, ensuring that each nobleman's tunic or peasant's garb spun its rightful tale. Here's the quirky bit. Tailors often acted like the original European life hacks, adept at making clothes fit a growing waistline using clever tricks like letting out seams or adding panels. These sartorial secrets were handed down like family recipes, shared behind curtains, whispered softly above the rattling of carts along cobbled streets. The reality back then was quite different from the convenience of ordering a new wardrobe at the click of a button. In our playful modern dance, with impulse buying and occasional returns, medieval folks embraced a patience unmatched, standing toe-to-toe with today's need for instant gratification. Yet, historians still argue how much of medieval tailoring was innovation birthed from necessity versus creative artistry, oscillating somewhere between practicality and flair. Were those garments a mere patchwork of salvage or a masterpiece, each stitch telling its own part in the tapestry? It's a puzzle pieced together through the ages, debated where fabric meets philosophy. You smile to think how these tailors, unbeknownst to them, were trendsetters in an era where trends moved slower than snails on a leisurely saunter. Their creations lived on, whispering behind stained glass windows and monastery walls, cajoling us with tales of vibrantly colorful life from centuries past, much like peeking into faded photo albums and feeling nostalgia sweep you up like a comforting blanket. Amidst the market's harmonious din, the tailor's craft weaves seamlessly into the lives they clothe, much like each stitch intertwines with the fabric. Picture proud knights bearing newly fitted surcoats into battle, confident peasants in patched robes gathering before market square cathedrals, or jovial merchants in fresh hose, ready to haggle for the best deal under the sun's benevolent gaze. With every whispered thread and measured seam, you uncover a beauty in the enduring hum of mortar and fabric, stitching stories that time sews into both cloak and community. While the market's buzz succumbs to soft echoes, a colorful cacophony of life and laughter endures in twilight's embrace. As day yields to night, let these warm tales nestle in the quietude, weaving lullabies of gentle adventures and nocturnal imaginings. In this familiar cocoon, allow history's woven wonders to cradle you beneath the cosmos, a comforting constancy until the dawn beckons once more with its own tapestry of light and story. So dream lightly and deeply as the medieval market hums you into night's sweet rest. Each stitch, each tale, unearthing our soul's shared adventure across time and tapestry. Rest easy until the call of the next day's bright rhythm leads our dreams forward into waking light. The path leads you through a forest thick with myths and legends, places where the ancient stories of creatures, both wondrous and eerie, live on in hushed tones. Picture the medieval imagination running wild under a canopy of stars, fueled by tales spun around crackling hearths. Sort of like diving into a rich fantasy series at midnight, even when you know you should probably be asleep. As you tread through the moss-carpeted glade, each step is cushioned like the softest cloud. Let the stories drift over you like a fine mist. Unicorns, dragons, and creatures that defy modern belief fill the ancient catalog, and even the skeptic in you can't help but wonder at their origins. It's a world alive with possibility, so beguilingly strange you half expect to see a tree wave hello. In medieval times, the line between real and fantastical was far hazier than we might assume. A tale penned by a monk could inspire belief or skepticism that blurred together under flickering candlelight. People genuinely considered the existence of such creatures just as authoritative as the next village over, or at least more real than a cat meme threading disruptions across a solemn Zoom meeting. Here's a peculiar tidbit. Back then, travelers loved to embellish their tales of adventure and discovery. When visiting exotic lands, they'd return not just with spices or silks, but stories of monstrous races and mythical beasts that seemed pulled straight from cream-stained pages of their favorite epic. It gave their otherwise uneventful journey a sprinkle of pizzazz, providing something to regale listeners with long after the spices had lost their scent. Historians still argue whether such tales were born from genuine encounters, vivid hallucinations, or merely wild imaginings spruced up by medieval spin doctors. Were these marvelous creatures real in some alternate way, reflective of an earth bound by fewer rules of logic? Perhaps a combination of earthly misunderstanding and celestial creativity, the truth skimming gently along the edges of what lay known versus unknown. You won't be able to resist cracking a smile at the thought of ancient storytellers sitting around, merrily adding a rogue dragon here or a winsome fairy there to their yarns, like today's multitasking meme sessions, where each iteration builds upon its predecessor with absolute delight. A tale spun yarn by yarn across miles. An imagination seemed the best way to cohere listeners into remapping belief in the world around. In the sylvan embrace, as night's cloak settles lovingly across the ethereal land, let thoughts track the trails of myth and reality weaving through the tapestry of your mind. See how these intricacies crafted a richer narrative than mere cloth or ink could ever capture alone. Through the tales of magical beasts and legendary exploits, the forest resonates with ancient harmonies long sung. As your footsteps echo through the clearing, pause and breathe in the possibilities, where earlier tales shadow dreams and night guides the soul's wanderlust into a well of timeless wonder. Let the forest's gentle songs comfort and keep you through this carousel of myth until fate's herald calls you forth into morning light. Cradle these narratives softly as the world slumbers, where dreams weave alongside whispered thoughts and stars knit the universe's grand tapestry. Gentle be the night's touch, as together we sojourn into the tender waiting embrace of midnight's lullaby, until dawn eagerly unravels another day's quivering thread of storytelling delight. Your journey now takes you into the heart of a grand medieval city, where the architecture rises majestically against the twilight sky, each stone a whisper of times gone by. As you navigate the labyrinthine streets, it's like wading through a cascade of open browser tabs, each one begging for your attention with its enticing secrets and hidden histories. In the center of the city stands its beating heart, the marketplace, bustling even as shadows stretch long across the cobblestones. Here, people gather not just to trade wares, but to exchange stories, weaving the fabric of their lives into the city's grand tapestry. It's as if each transaction carried more than goods. It carried whispers of lands far and wide, the medieval precursor to today's social media scuttle. Vendors shout their wares, the scents of spices and fresh produce mingling in the cool evening air, inviting and intoxicating. Picture an atmosphere alive with possibility, where serendipity feels as tangible as the goods selling faster than tales of dragons or knights at languid tavern gatherings. It's hard not to chuckle imagining a medieval notification board, perhaps a chalky wall covered in scribbled messages, rumors, and public decrees, an ancient commentary thread revealing the town's latest buzz. Receiving news meant standing, reading aloud, or whispering it over hearty mugs of ale, a trend the town criers kept alive before it became the job of your notification ding. Here's a quirky aside. Some cities had elaborate guild systems, kind of like quirky medieval LinkedIn networks, with apprentices, journeymen, and masters all weaving reputation, skill, and economic threads together. Each guild not only safeguarded a specific trade, but also bolstered community ties with big social events, grand processions, and sometimes affairs of scandalous proportions. Unsurprisingly, a practice that human history seems keen on repeating. Historians still ponder whether the splendor of these medieval cities lay more in their architectural triumphs or the vibrant communities that made them thrive. Did the stones sing their own songs? Or was it the hum of the marketplace that infused life into cold masonry? Such questions ripple through time, reflection found in the same multiplicity your stuffed social feeds offer you. Insights that hover between the here and now and forgotten whispers of old. With the city's ancient rhythm gently pulsing around you, each step uncovers echoes of laughter, agreements, and temporal transgressions, reminding you of the humanity woven through both brick and parchment. Picture artisans huddled in narrow alleys, shaping wonders from clay or weaving worlds from wool, constructing futures dreamt in quiet solitude only to see them manifest amid bustling activity. As you pause at the city's edge, the pathway now dimly lit with lantern glow, you cast your gaze back at the sprawling vista, a reminder of how cities become stories, just as people do, etched against the canvas of history waiting to be retold, a medieval riddle wrapped in stone and shadow, charted amongst dreams. And thus, with night's velvet curtain drawn over the city's panorama, let the murmur of bygone echoes serenade your sojourn into dreams. Wrapped in the narrative's embrace, rest now as history gently carries you through its woven tales, spanning epochs and lives lived in whispers tracing down to midnight's tranquil corridor. Softly, as the tale bids you goodnight, allow the timeless dance of the city carry you gently into dawn's warm embrace, eager to greet the stories awaiting unspun when the sun rises on yet another day's bright new beginnings. You find yourself wandering into yet another layer of this medieval tapestry, a library, hushed and vast, where the scent of old parchment hangs in the air like a long-held secret. Here, the echoes of scholarly debates and whispered truths reside among shelves burdened with scrolls and volumes, each promising a glimpse into thoughts pondered under candlelight. It's akin to diving into an endless sea of internet tabs, where knowledge is boundless, waiting just a click, or in this case, a turned page away. The library is a sanctuary of quietude amidst the clamor of medieval life. Monks and scribes labor over vellum and ink, transcribing not just the words, but the very soul of a civilization reaching across centuries. Picture the diligence, akin to curating a playlist for a train journey, knowing that every selection, every chosen word, carries the weight of enlightenment, ready to weather the passage of time. Among these tomes, there lies a quirky side note, marginalia, those cheeky little illustrations on the edges of manuscript pages, where bored scribes allowed their imagination to run wild, sketching everything from prancing doodles to the surprisingly contemporary musings akin to what's scribbled in the margins of your textbooks or whispered humor in a group chat thread. Historians still argue whether the medieval libraries were primarily centers of learning or bastions of control, where the power of knowledge was sequestered only for a select few. Were these volumes the keys to enlightenment or merely symbols of authority locked under a librarian's watchful eye? Debates float timelessly through history's corridors, much like deciding which Instagram filter best captures the essence of a moment. Despite the exclusivity, the libraries became the lifeline of medieval intellect, reservoirs of wisdom containing the universe's mysteries, or at least the closest approximations thereof, recorded with painstaking care by hands long weathered by time. It's a notion familiar to anyone who's ever spent sleepless nights diving through Wikipedia rabbit holes, seeking the comforting clarity of knowledge amid life's complexities. You can almost hear the pages fluttering in the stillness, a symphony of silent voices eager to convey their wisdom across centuries, promising insights both practical and profound. Picture scholars huddling over these texts, their brows furrowed in concentration as they interpret the past, endeavoring to illuminate the future. A meditative dance of intellect and inquiry as daylight slips into twilight, casting long shadows across the ancient walls. This sanctuary of thought becomes a haven for quiet reflection. Here, you find solace in the pages of history, a gentle reminder that humanity's quest for understanding has always been endless. Much like the soothing lull of raindrops sliding down a window pane on a sleepy Sunday afternoon. Rest now, nestled in the comforting embrace of these stories that bind us across time, holding hands with the past to guide us into the future. Let your mind wander freely in the whispers of ancient wisdom, cradled by the soft rustle of pages turning as you drift into the warm embrace of dreams. In the quiet company of history's whispers, allow your journey to journey just a little further, beyond the constraints of time, where imagination flows freely through the corridors of a world built on dreams. As night enfolds you, rest easy and let the tales leave their gentle imprints, guiding you softly until the dawn's promise calls your heart to awaken once more.